Hey guys, what is up? This is Colin with Colin Talks Crypto, bringing you the latest and greatest news in the EOS space. So we have a ton of stuff today to cover. There's been so much news. We have everything from Bitfinex enabling deposits on their exchange to a blog post from Dan Larimer himself. I'm going to share what I have found to be some very cool links in regards to EOS so that you can enjoy them yourself. And lastly, and maybe perhaps most importantly, we're going to cover the topic of EOS's recent transaction reversals. It's a very controversial topic, and I think there's valid arguments on both sides of this. So without further ado, let's get into today's news. All right, guys, so this is hot off the press. Oh, fucked up there. Bitfinex, the exchange, has just enabled deposits and withdrawals for EOS. This is the first major exchange to enable withdrawals on the live EOS blockchain. And one key thing about this is that the actual fees for withdrawing the tokens are zero. And this is because the EOS network allows free transactions for users, which is one of its innovative and new features that it brings to the table. It actually allows users to interact with the blockchain with no cost on their end, mirroring the existing internet architecture right now, where if you go to a website like Twitter, Facebook, Google, and you do an action, you don't have to pay for that action as a user. In fact, it makes sense because that would invite a lot of friction and prevent users from having a smooth experience. And so EOS is actually one of the first blockchains to allow free user transactions, which I think is huge. I think that is very, very smart. Dan Larimer hit that one on the head. And that's just one of the features that I think is going to help EOS rise to the top, because who wants to pay every time they like a post on Facebook? All right, on to other things. This is EOS FUD Bingo. So you may or may have not seen a tremendous amount of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the crypto space in regards to EOS. So much so that this user here has created EOS FUD Bingo. And let's just take a look at some of the squares here. We have epic vulnerabilities. Let's do a conference call. We had a problem. Let's just hop on a quick conference call and sort that out. The whole blockchain's run by Chinese whales. We got 4 billion in ICO money, and what do we have to show for it? There is no product. Wait, yes there is. And right in the middle we have centralized. So let's play some EOS FUD Bingo. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. So I wanted to share a bunch of projects, services, websites that I have personally found to be really cool or really helpful. And here's one of them. This is eosnetworkmonitor.io, and it shows the current block, which of course is going at 0.5 seconds per block because EOS is that fast of a blockchain. You'll notice we have currently 1.7 million blocks, which is more than Bitcoin and Ethereum combined. And we've done this in the first week of operation. That's how many blocks we've created here. One thing that's very cool is on this website, it actually shows the transactions per second live and the maximum so far. And the maximum transactions so far that has occurred within this first week has already reached 592 transactions per second, which is way more than any other blockchain, aside from BitShares and Steemit, which were also created by Dan Larimer. Bitcoin's maximum transactions on the base blockchain is somewhere in the range of 3 to 8 transactions per second. Ethereum's is somewhere in the range of 20 to 30. And they're both seeking methods to scale right now. We have Bitcoin attempting to do the Lightning Network, and we have Bitcoin Cash doing on-chain scaling by increasing the blocks, which I personally think is the smarter route. I think it's more practical, with zero confirmation transactions being done in under a second in most cases. And then we have Ethereum, which is doing Casper for proof of stake. It has sharding. We have the Raiden network, which is Ethereum's version of the Lightning Network. And so Ethereum has a lot of things in store for it, but we just need to see them come to fruition. There's actually talks of having a hard fork for Ethereum where it rolls out 2 of those features at the same time, which I'm excited about. But if you look at it, what we have with EOS is those features are already out. We already have transactional capacity at 592 transactions per second. And this is without improving or enhancing the protocol. It could easily perform an order of magnitude greater than that, eventually hundreds of thousands or millions of transactions per second once we get the scaling in place with the parallelization, which means having multiple blockchains run side by side and having side chains. So that's a feat right there. In the first week, we've hit 592 transactions per second. And if you look down here on this website, again, this is still eosnetworkmonitor.io. It lists all the block producers, Bitfinex, Canada, Canon, etc., down to 21. And these first 21 are the active block producers. These are the block producers who are making the blocks right now. And the green, that's hopping around from block producer to block producer every 6 seconds, is denoting which block producer is currently making the next 12 blocks. Every 12 blocks is 6 seconds because each block is half a second. And so now Liquid EOS is making the next 12 blocks, and in 6 more seconds, another block producer, EOS New York, is making the next 12 blocks, and so on. And this was Dan Larimer's method for scaling also. Rather than have each block producer only make 1 block, why not have them make a series of blocks, which reduces latency for hopping between block producers over and over and over, and allows a lot more transactions to be processed more quickly. Again, this is a trade-off between decentralization and scalability, and I can get into a whole debate on that, but basically we have to look at what is the purpose of decentralization. It's immutability. So there's a point where there's so much decentralization that it actually hampers scalability. And I think that's what we actually ran into in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And they're fantastic blockchains and they've gotten us to where we are. But we really have to be pragmatic when we look at this and take a look at how much decentralization is actually needed to secure a blockchain, to prevent it from government intervention, freezing, takeover, and allow us to scale at the same time to extremely high amounts. And of course, you're probably thinking, well, gosh, if EOS just reversed some transactions for 7 users, I think it was 5 users with 7 accounts, something like that. And we'll get into that in a bit. So then on to the next site that I think is very cool and very useful is EOS Tracker. It's a blockchain explorer. So you can type your block or your transaction ID up here, just like blockchain info for Bitcoin. And if you click down here on producers, so it's actually showing you the daily reward in EOS that block producer makes. So the #1 block producer, Bitfinex right now, with 1,190 EOS per day, is getting that much reward. And let's just do a quick calculator on this. 1190 times, what's the price per EOS? $10.52. So they're making $12,518 per day times 365, 4.5 million for the #1 block producer right now at the current valuation of EOS. And you notice it goes down. It's proportionate to the number of votes. So it's incentive for the block producer to be as good as possible so that they get as many votes as possible. So the better services they offer, the better quality job they do, they are incentivized to do that because it gives them more votes. The community will think of them more highly and vote them higher, and they'll get a higher reward for doing so. And I like that. That seems to be a good method for incentivizing quality block producers. If they all got the same amount, they might not try very hard. Kind of like when you have a monopoly, you know, there's not much incentive to innovate. But if you have a higher payout, well then, shit, I want a higher payout. Let's strive to achieve that. And if you go down to the 21st block producer, Crypto Lines right here, which is the last block producer that's actively creating blocks, he gets 704 EOS per day, which at the current rates is $7,400 per day, and yearly that would be $2.7 million. So there's a big spread, about 4.5 million to 2.7 million between the first and the 21st block producers. And you'll notice that 22, 23, 24 on down, these block producers are the backup block producers, and they still get paid. It does jump quite a bit down after that 21st block producer when you get into the backup block producers, but he's still getting paid about half that, and it continues on down, and the minimum payout that a block producer can receive is 100 EOS. So if they make less than 100 EOS, they just get nothing. So there's 54 block producers total, 21 of which are the main active block producers. And then the next 33 block producers are still getting a reward for being a backup, which I think is also very smart because it, again, incentivizes block producers to be a backup node in case something happens to these first 21. So we have a good system there. So that's another site that I think is very cool. That's eostracker.io/producers to get this screen here. I just like to know where the money's going. And lastly, for our cool sites, I have this here. This is eos-radar.com. Very cool, very creative site. It's showing those same 21 block producers, but in a world map form. And you can see that the highlighted glowing area is the active block producer. So it just went from the United Kingdom to China, and next we have Africa. And you can actually zoom in on these and you'll see what city it's even being produced in. So let's see where this one is. That's Vancouver. Where's the next one? China, Beijing. I like this because it allows you to see the level of decentralization geographically. You want a geopolitical decentralization for any blockchain. You don't want all your mining hardware or miners or block producers all in one country. You know, like in Bitcoin, we have probably over 50% of the hash rate all centralized in one country, which is China. And at least with EOS, we have, as you can see here currently, there's only 3 in China. There's 2 in South America, 2 in North America, 1 in the islands near Cuba. We have about 3 or 4 in Europe. We even have 1 here in Israel. So there's a nice diversification geographically, which is part of having a strong, uncensorable blockchain. A government could not overstep their bounds and shut down block producers in all these different countries simultaneously. It would require too much of a concerted effort. And so this is a lot of resilience, and I think that's awesome. I think that's part of the strength of the EOS block producer distribution. Okay, so let's move on here. So let's cover the topic of EOS freezing accounts in order to restore stolen tokens to their rightful owners. The key here being to their rightful owners, which is provable. There's a lot of FUD going on about this. This user made a real good breakdown, Timos Born, and so I just wanted to read a couple parts. There's a lot of debate going on right now in the crypto community on whether or not freezing of stolen funds and subsequent return to their rightful owners is ethical or not. Many claim that EOS block producers are acting like gods of the EOS blockchain and are just the same as a corrupt state actor in their ability to freeze accounts and restore stolen property to the rightful owners. And then we have a figure in the crypto space named Nick Szabo. He's fairly critical of EOS. He said, in EOS, a few complete strangers can freeze what users thought was their money. Under the EOS protocol, you must trust a constitutional organization comprised of people you will likely never get to know. The EOS constitution is socially unscalable and a security hole. I see some validity to that. I could also argue that it's, if he says it's socially unscalable, how do we know that? We haven't scaled it yet. And when we do scale it, when you get more users into a blockchain, you get more nodes. For example, in Bitcoin, you get more nodes, and in EOS, you get more users, and you'd get more arbiters. So I don't know that that's true. He's stating that as a fact, but I don't know that that's actually a fact, because there would be more people willing to be enforcing the Constitution at the same time. So I don't know that it's socially unscalable, and I don't know that it's a security hole. I guess time will tell. He feels very strongly that it is so. And it may be. Well, time will tell. We'll have to find out. I think that EOS is a very grand experiment in something very new. And it's refreshing in that regard because we're not just seeing the same old being done here. So let's scroll down to the bottom of this article. And I like his summary here. He says, EOS, like Bitcoin, is a voluntary system. If you prefer Bitcoin as a currency, then you may choose Bitcoin or any other crypto. And I think that's such a great point. Basically, EOS, like I said, is in a way, it's an experiment on something new, radically different, a lot of different and new features, scalability, governance, all sorts of things, all rolled into one package called EOS. And we're going to find out how good it is or not good it is. We're going to witness that as things develop. And I'd just like to make a comparison. A couple years ago on the Ethereum network, we had the DAO hack. It wasn't really a hack. It was actually just a user exploiting the poorly written smart contract, which, by the way, could have been paused or frozen on EOS and fixed and redeployed. But what happened on Ethereum is that there was no such way to fix the contract. And there was no way to make right those users who had been wronged. And so what happened is the Ethereum network and community, after some very divisive debate where the community actually split into two, the majority decided that they would go ahead and roll back the blockchain and make good all those donators to the DAO contract. And I would know because I was actually one of them. And I remember seeing this all go down. And what happened is the network forked, and there was two networks as a result of it. Ethereum Classic exists because of the idea that a blockchain should be completely immutable and code as law, and it should never, ever be reversed. And that is Ethereum Classic to this day. And Ethereum actually went back and took the money from the thief while it was frozen for a period, I think it was 30 days where it couldn't be moved, luckily. And during that period of time, gave it back to all the token holders. And the theft of like $150 million was actually reversed. I do agree with that. I think it was the right thing to do. And again, it was very controversial at the time. And I think that's what we're seeing again with EOS is another iteration of the controversy of should a blockchain be allowed to reverse or roll back things. And if you look at Ethereum now, it's doing amazingly well. I mean, the market seems to have agreed with the decision. Right now, Ethereum is at $534, and Ethereum Classic, I don't know what it is. The last time I looked, it's like, it might be $30. I actually don't even know, $15. It's become less and less proportionately to the value of Ethereum. And right there, that is the market saying that they value Ethereum more than the choice that Ethereum Classic made. So right there, I would take that as like a hint or suggestion that perhaps the market likes some ability to do the right thing. Not to just go around willy-nilly and blocking people's money, but when there's a 100% provable, justifiable grievance and theft, and it can be made right, people like it to be made right. And I think any good person recognizes that that's the right thing to do. If I steal your $100, I don't deserve that $100. A criminal might think that he deserves that $100. I don't deserve that $100. It's your money. I should give it back to you. So this allows that to happen. And I think that is the right thing to do. And there's definitely two sides of the story on this when it comes to blockchains. And you may disagree with me. And I completely understand because governments have proven and people have proven time and time again in history to be not worthy of trust when it comes to money, when it comes to governance. It's just provably the case. So this, like I said, is a grand experiment, and we're really going to have to see how workable is this? Is it possible to integrate fair and justice in a blockchain, or is it too subject to manipulation, and is it going to be perverted and abused? And I think that's very exciting that we're going to see how this goes down. So anyways, I got sidetracked there. But that's what he said here. He said, EOS, like Bitcoin, is a voluntary system. If you prefer Bitcoin as a currency, then you may choose Bitcoin or any other crypto. And I think it's great. That's why there's so many cryptos out there. Because if you want something that you never, ever want to have a chance to lose your funds on, then maybe pick Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin or some other blockchain where code is law and there's no rollbacks allowed. But if you want a blockchain where you want to be able to use it, and if your grandmother lost her password to her account, you have recourse. You could get it back by proving ownership of that. I think that EOS has a big case made for it. And I think that we're going to see. Time will tell, and the market will tell. So in summary, the market will decide, and it's okay if you don't agree. If you don't agree, don't invest in it. And if you feel threatened by EOS, or you feel threatened by any crypto, because perhaps it's got features that you wonder if they're going to be successful or not, or better in some ways than a crypto that you hold, instead of being emotionally attached to that crypto that you're holding, it's okay to diversify. Buy some of that crypto that you think could be threatening in a good way, in that it could be better. Diversify proportionately to the risk, and don't be stuck in one crypto. I think that's a very important lesson to learn. It's to not be stuck in one way. Rather than going onto Reddit and spewing out a bunch of FUD like the FUD bingo, rather than going onto Reddit and typing, they'll freeze your account, EOS got hacked, rather than doing that, how about you just invest in it if you're that scared about it? Or if you really don't like EOS, then sell it, don't buy it. And that's right there. Money speaks louder than words. And so by investing or not investing, you're speaking with your wallet and not just flapping your lips off. Speak with your wallet. So I made some notes here. The market is the ultimate arbiter. If the market values this solution, money will flow into it. If it thinks it's a poor solution, money will flow out of it. My personal opinion is that I think EOS is testing something new. That's why there is so much controversy. EOS is pioneering a new field. Maybe it will prove to be too centralized. Maybe it will prove to be successful. But I think there is room in the market for this option and experiment. If you go to CoinMarketCap, we have many, many cryptocurrencies, thousands. Each one can fill a different need. Bitcoin can be one, EOS can be another, depending on what you are looking for. All right, guys, and lastly, we have a Medium article posted by Dan Larimer just moments ago. This is June 20th, and he entitled it Decentralized Blockchain Governance. And it's a fantastic read. It answers a lot of the recent concerns that have come up and acknowledges the birth of this brand new blockchain. And I highlighted a couple parts. And so he says, we, the EOS community, have embarked on a grand experiment to see if a global community can govern itself without the well-documented pitfalls of existing world governments. Bitcoin was created as a trustless money system because the governance structures in control of the world monetary system abused their power to exercise undue influence over world governments and their populations. The global population is powerless to prevent world governments from consuming our capital base so long as we rely upon their currencies. Through limitless money printing, governments and banks that fund them can confiscate the majority of the world's resources without a tax revolt. It isn't until years later, when the economy slumps under the burden of prior capital consumption, that people notice what happened. With Bitcoin and early smart contract platforms came the concepts that code is law and hash power makes right. This, combined with the belief in censorship resistance, gave people a new level of trust in the monetary governance. The big idea is that we should remove all of the potentially corrupt people from the equation. With no one in charge, the rules can never change, and we can be free of corruption, confiscation, inflation, and capital controls. Has Bitcoin and Ethereum improved things? For the past 10 years, we have had the opportunity to observe a live experiment in the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of blockchains in protecting people from loss of funds. I've created a list of all the ways people lose money under existing governments and under code is law. And so he makes a list here of common ways people have lost money with blockchains in this first 10 years of the Bitcoin and Ethereum experiment. And he says, number one, forgotten password and lost keys. That's the number one reason people lose Bitcoin. They lose their keys or they forget their password. Number two, their keys get compromised. 3, phishing scams. 4, exchange hacks. 5, bugs in code. 6, double spend attacks, where basically you send one transaction to pay for something and then you quickly send another transaction to try to cancel out the first transaction while you already walked away with the goods. 7, mugging, kidnapping, extortion. That's kind of high on the list. That's a little frightening. 8, social engineering. 9, capital gains taxes. 10, government seizing tokens. 11, supply growth. 12, fees. 13, false sense of privacy from all. 14, denial of service by spam. And 15, send a wrong address. So those are all the ways that you can lose your money and freedom on the blockchain. And he goes on. And I really like this part here. He talks about the code is law myth. There is widespread belief that there is no governance of Bitcoin or Ethereum, and that these protocols are decentralized. There is further a belief that the code should be law. In reality, all blockchains have human governance processes that reveal themselves in emergencies and when the protocol upgrades. Ethereum's shadow government hard forked to fix the DAO hack. Bitcoin mining pools voted on which fork to support when a software upgrade introduced a long unintended fork. The Ethereum Foundation has used trademark law to define the official version of the chain that exchanges are allowed to list. SegWit was accepted due to a summit of community leaders who voted on a compromise that included increasing the block size, only to be betrayed due to the phased rollout plan that later abandoned big blocks. I remember that. They actually agreed to SegWit 2x, and that was the community compromise for both enabling SegWit, which is what the small blockers and the r/Bitcoin crowd wanted, and the r/BTC crowd from Reddit, big blockers who wanted larger blocks. And so everyone had agreed, okay, we'll do both. We'll do SegWit 2x first, and then we'll roll out the bigger blocks. At that moment, we got 85, 90, I think, percent agreement. And it was only because we got agreement on both of those things. And what happened is the community then, as the agreement stated on SegWit 2x, enabled SegWit. And then right after that, the small blocker crowd and the Bitcoin Core Blockstream guys immediately reneged on their half of the deal and said, sorry, actually, we're not going to do the block size increase. Thanks for the SegWit. Gotcha. And that's what we have today. And of course, you could never say that because they would delete your post. They'd censor it. So they had quite the political structure, if you ask me. They socially engineer it so that you can't talk about it, but then force a certain outcome and then silence those who talk about it. Anyway, so that's what he's referring to here by being betrayed due to a phased rollout plan that later abandoned big blocks. I saw that occur, actually. And this is a beautiful synopsis of the whole thing. Baby steps. EOS is a new community building the tools necessary to achieve this vision of a global community governing itself without the use of violence. Over time, the community will formalize arbitration processes, constitutional amendments, division of power, and limitations of liability. In the meantime, the community is using the tools it has today to enforce its contracts and combine the blatant fraud and theft so prevalent in the cryptocurrency industry. If everything develops as I hope, the EOS community will be the safest place to hold tokens without fear of unjust rulings, identity theft, token hacks, lost passwords, etc. It will have stable monetary policy with civilized dispute resolution. There will be bad actors, and communities will live or die based upon how quickly they identify and remove them. All other blockchains are incapable of removing bad actors because they are not based upon the premise of contractual cooperation for a common good, but instead upon the premise of the law of the jungle, where technical makes right. Brains are the new brawn, and nerdy cavemen are arguing that they have the divine right to whatever property they can hack. When hacks do occur, people resort to violence. At the hands of governments, they ask to track down and punish the hackers and scammers. EOS is fundamentally different from other governments and blockchain communities in that its community wishes to operate at the highest possible ethical standard of voluntary consent and non-violence. Whereas other blockchain communities rely on existing governments to get retribution, EOS is the first blockchain to take responsibility for its own community and not depend upon the corrupt, violent legacy dispute resolution systems. EOS is designed to focus on restorative restitution rather than punitive retribution. It is my hope that the EOS community can level the playing field and secure life, liberty, property, and justice for all. Dan Larimer. So anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. I really appreciate it. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments below. Have a great day.